Okay, so this first video is going to take you through the new version of Autodesk Vasari Beta 3. And again, if you've watched my video series, you'll notice that a lot of this stuff is going to repeat. This is primarily for students that are opening the Vasari, Project Vasari for the first time, to begin to get familiar with what Vasari is doing, the modeling techniques that Vasari uses that are going to translate into Revit. And this first video also will take you through an introduction to running a first simulation on conceptual massing. So where we want to start, this is the opening screen for Vasari once you launch the program. And you'll see a couple of things, families down here. If you're not familiar with Revit, don't dive into families just yet. Get your legs underneath you to understand how the modeling system is going to work. These are going to be recent projects. In fact, this is project 1. This is what I've been working on right here. But we're going to approach this from a beginner standpoint. So we're going to go ahead and launch a brand new project. The first thing that you'll want to do is set your site location. If you'll notice, the site currently is Boston, Massachusetts. And what we want to do right off the bat is go ahead and log in to your Autodesk account. You'll need this because Vasari is going to constantly be talking to the cloud to run the simulations. And as such, you need to have a login, specifically a login as a student. So go ahead and do that. I'm already logged in, so I'm not going to go through that process. But right up here, you'll need to click on that because the login gets you the first opportunity, which is setting your site location. So once you've done that, I'm going to click on Boston, Massachusetts right here, set location to change the location of the project. So the project that we're going to be working through is in Springfield, Missouri. Let's just go ahead and type that in. And for some reason, the default map mode does not let you zoom in as far as the satellite mode. You can see this is about as close as I can get, which gets me no relevant site data whatsoever other than latitude and longitude. So by clicking right here on satellite, I can actually zoom in much further. And I know the site, fortunately, is just off the square right here. In this location, I could type in latitude and longitude or a street address, and it would snap me right to that location. But just running through this a couple of times, I know Springfield, Missouri grabs our downtown square, and the site that we're looking at is right here at McDaniel and South. So I'm going to left-click and drag and drop the site location right there. So now that that's established, I have latitude and longitude. The next thing that I need to do before importing my site image is I need to select the appropriate weather station. And I know I've got 2 weather stations close. But I want to take a quick look at the difference between those 2 weather stations. So if I zoom out one more, there's my first weather station. This is the one that's selected. I know it's selected because unlike this one, it is highlighted in orange. And if I look at this weather station location, you notice that's kind of down in a valley. It's on the outskirts of the city. I can assume that there is some terrain. And now Vasari does not import terrain. I'm hoping that they'll add that really soon. Hope you're listening out there, Autodesk kids. That would be a great feature to be able to see. But it is going to import a flat site. But I know wind as a weather pattern that's going to influence my design is going to be impacted by the terrain right through here. My next closest weather station is right here at the local airport. I know this is very, very flat. Again, it's on the edge of an urban district, but I know that the weather conditions here are going to be more consistent with the terrain downtown. So I'm going to select that as a weather station. I'm going to zoom back in to our building site. And the next thing that I'm going to do is import this site image. So that is the overall site. I'm going to say import. And that brings in the satellite map at a 1:1 scale. And so I'm ready to start working with that. So as an introduction to Vasari again, I am in a 3D perspective view. You can see that in the project browser right here. I'll often switch between sort of the 3D perspective view right here and the 3D axonometric view. If I want a specific plan view and I want to see things in an axonometric way with the plan, I can now left click on the view cube, and I'm seeing this as a true plan, looking from up above. The navigation that I'm using, I use the wheel to zoom in and out. And again, if I put my cursor over a specific location and scroll in with the wheel, it's going to zoom to that location. So that's a really important navigation feature to remember. To pan, I'm going to hold the wheel down and move the mouse. Then to orbit, I'm going to shift and use the middle mouse to orbit around. And those are the most common ways to navigate around. I can also use the view cube to go to elevation views. So again, I'm in my axonometric view, or sort of a sideways on axonometric view that I can orbit around. Or if I'm in my 3D view, I can do some of the same types of things, but remember these views are not true elevation views because I'm actually in a perspective viewport looking at it from this direction. So let's go into some quick building massing. So one of the first things that I want to do is get some of the adjacent buildings put together right here. So to do that, I'm going to start by using the modeling tools from the modeling tab, create mass. And I'm simply going to use a tool to start tracing out the overall forms. So I could go to the line tool right off and just left click and come across. And one of the things that you'll hear me say on occasion is precision is kind of your enemy. I want you to remember the phase that we're working on or that we're thinking about right now. This is sort of a schematic level design. I'm not wildly interested in making sure that I come exactly to this exact pixel at this exact corner at this exact location. And you can really get caught up and lose a lot of time in trying to do that type of work. The reality is I'm not exactly sure how accurate the satellite image is. I know it's very close. I know if I select this line, or let's do this line right here, maybe I can run a quick dimension across it. Let's see, or where would that be at? Align dimension. And I could run a dimension from edge to edge and see that's 107 feet 6 inches. So I know that those are reasonably accurate, but at the conceptual design level, I just need to get things done. I need to get things moving. I need to get my ideas out. So if you'll think in that direction, you'll find tools like Vasari or Revit for early design to be much more fluid if you won't try and get everything incredibly precise right at the beginning. Edit as you go along. So at this point, that is only a two-dimensional plane, and I have a couple of options for selection. I can select a line. So as I hover over an object, you'll see that it changes color. That's sort of the pre-select option. That's Vasari saying, I'm getting ready to select you. I've got a couple of other options. If I hover over something and hit the tab button, so just hitting the tab button one at a time, it's going to toggle through options. So that's saying, do you want to select all the lines that are chained together? Do you want to select the surface that all those lines chained together create, or just that line? So that tab key is going to be very, very key in terms of working in your 3D space in either Revit or Vasari. You'll get really used to working through that. Or you can just pay attention exactly to where you are hovering. Both Revit and Vasari like edges. They like your cursor to be over edges. If I move right to the middle of something, I might be picking the center of that object, but you might not know exactly what you are selecting. So, I'll typically use an edge. I don't want just that line. I actually want the entire surface or the form element. So I'm going to left click on that, and I now have an option to drag this up and turn it into a volume. So I'm going to do something like that. I know this adjacent building is about 22 feet, so I'm just clicking once on that dimension to bring up this box. I'm just going to type in 22 feet. And I now know I have Nona Nunzias right there, and I'm going to go ahead and say Finish Mass. And I'm going to do a mass for this building. Let's do the next one over. I want to repeat those steps one more time. So Model, Create Mass. This time, instead of using lines, I'll just go ahead and use the rectangle tool. I know they start in pretty much the same plane, so I'll start drawing that there and just drag that back to that location. I'm going to hit the escape button to drop the drawing tool. I'm going to select this. And let's assume the next building's just a shave lower. So again, I can select that top surface. And then I'm going to select the dimension that represents the height. And let's do 20 feet. So again, when you're typing in a dimension inside of Vasari, all that I have to do is type in the first one and then enter. I do not have to do feet and inches. If I wanted this to be 18 feet 6 inches, I would just type in 18 space 6. It's much faster than trying to do the actual feet and inches. Let's change that back to 20 feet, just 20, enter, and I've got 20 feet. So those two are plenty for me right now. Let's say I want to do the building across the street as well. That might impact us both in terms of wind and sun. And I think I'll just do those two together. That's sort of one large building. Create mass. Let's do that. And again, I'm going to select, tapping escape to drop the tool. I'm going to move this up. And then I believe this one was 26. I'm kind of making that up as I go along. It would be great if you guys can verify the heights of those buildings as we're working through. But we've got these two adjacent buildings that I know are going to begin to work and create parameters for our site, especially in terms of sun and wind. Should definitely go ahead and get this block of buildings in, and maybe these on down a little bit further as well. But I know this is our building site, our proposed building site. So let's go ahead and work on the massing for that piece as well. So again, I'm going to go create mass, and I'm going to start a box right here. I'm going to set this project back just a little bit, make it a shave shorter than those other buildings. I'm going to pull this up. I misclicked there. There we go. I'm going to change the 13 feet, let's say, into 28 feet, make it slightly taller. And I now know that I'm ready to start looking at this building as something that I can start running a simulation on this early on. So the other ways, before I get too far into that, just looking at a few additional tools. Under the Create Mass tool, I have lines, so I can begin to create things outside of the orthogonal form. Okay, I can also use arcs to begin to build curve forms. Oops, Control Z, very useful. It's the undo button. Okay, I can also draw different types of splines. Don't dive into the 3D spline tool yet. That's actually going to give you a spline that runs on the X, Y, and Z axis, or a three-dimensional spline. But you can certainly work with this spline. This will build a spline that is acting in a single plane. But I'll also continue to remind you that you're working on conceptual designs. If your forms get too outlandish and too wild, you're really moving past sort of this early level conceptual design thinking and into something that is more design specific, sort of predetermining what you're going to do rather than allowing the information and data that we're going to build to begin to influence you. So getting past a simple box form, let's go ahead and finish this and let me delete those guys. If I wanted to edit this, so I've got something initially built and I want to add some complexity to it, I'm going to go Edit Mass. There are a few things that I can do. If I select this surface, I can come in and, again, I can drag or I can type in a numeric value to change that form, but I can also select an edge. So let's say I wanted to make that edge lower than the other edge, lower than this edge. So let's just drop that to, say, 22 feet. To actually create something that has a little bit of a slope to it. I could also come in and select only a point, and I can push that in. Let's make that number 84 feet. And so that's a simple edit to do in terms of the form, but I do want you to notice the complexity of the exterior form that creates. That has actually warped this wall. That is now a curved wall that's been built. So there's some really interesting things that you can start to build in terms of considering how you edit edges and corners. So this is no longer a plane. That is a curved surface. But I can go onto a plane as well, and I can begin to draw on a plane. Let's see here, is that? Oh, that is not a planar surface either. I believe this one right here is. If I select that plane, I can also begin to work forms on that plane. So I selected that surface first, and then I can also draw new objects on that. That trick will not work on a form like this or this because those are curved surfaces. That is not a planar surface. But if I have a planar surface, I can begin to add complexity to that plane by selecting it first and then using that as a reference plane to draw on top of. Okay, so let's Control Z these basic changes. Back to my original box form, I hope. And Vasari does like to do that on occasion. It is a beta piece of software. Let's hope that that got my view back. Let's see here. Let's try zoom to fit and hope that that works. Nope. That's that perspective view. I've seen that before. Every now and then it does kind of throw up like that. So we're just going to go ahead and go back to this axonometric view. I actually haven't had that problem with the axonometric view. I'm going to say finish mass. So I now have these existing forms and I have my new building form. Oh, there's one other thing that I want to do with this. This is actually a two-story design. So we do want to come in and add that second level in. And the default template for Vasari does have multiple levels split up for you. They are these icons right through here, or these objects right through here. And the default is set 10 feet apart. So let's go back. I'm going to go select this object. This is our primary building object. Edit in place one more time. Our height was 28 feet. Let's assume that those are two equal level floors at 14 and 14. So what I want to do is I'm going to select this second floor piece right here. I'm going to go finish mass. I'm going to select this. You'll see their default at 10 feet apiece. I'm going to change my first floor level to 14 feet, my second floor level to 14 feet. I currently don't have a fourth and fifth, so I'm just going to delete those. And I have essentially what represents my roof plane, my second floor, and my base. Okay, so if I select this object now, I can go mass floors, and I want floors at level 1 and level 2, and say OK. And you can see that it's added in that floor base, that floor plate at the second level to represent 2 stories on my building. So if I want to run a baseline simulation on this very basic form, I know that this is an office building. So the very first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Analyze tab. We've already set the location and we've selected our weather station. I need to click Enable Energy Model. And you can see right away what this has done is this has come in and it has automatically given me some default settings for what the building envelope is. Most notably, windows covering 40% of the exterior area. What I want to do is next is I want to go ahead and set up my energy settings. You notice I'm already set to an office type, so that's perfect. I'm going to run a default operating schedule, and I'm going to just start with the basic default HVAC system, which is a central VAV. And I'm going to say OK. If you note, the common wall between these two buildings still has windows on it. And I've been working with the folks at Vasari to try and understand how to set these exterior walls to an interior wall. Haven't gotten there yet. Hopefully we'll get that soon, or maybe once this goes to YouTube, somebody out there will give me a tip on how to easily adjust that. What I can do that's going to help the situation is, again, I'm going to use the Tab key to select these exterior walls surfaces right here. And I'm going to select on that, and underneath my properties for this wall, rather than by energy setting, let me pull this out just a little bit. Rather than using by energy setting. I'm going to change this to by surface. This means that each surface can have unique properties. And I'm going to go ahead and set the percentage of glass to 0. Again, I'm going to use that same trick. I'm going to tab to select that surface. I'm going to scroll down. This is another odd thing that's been happening to me, is this properties piece wants to jump around for some reason on me. That's by surface and 0. And I need to actually go ahead and pull this back. I don't think I'm going to be able to select that lower surface. Oh, well, there I can. Yeah, that'll work, I hope. Value by surface 0. And I've got one more surface right here to do. It's that one. So I'm selecting that lower level wall between the two buildings. By surface and 0. So I've got default glass setting, 40% glazing on 3 sides. I'm not looking at insulation yet or anything else like that. I just want to run a baseline simulation to understand sort of where I'm starting at with this. So to run your first building simulation then, underneath the Analyze tab, I'm going to click Run Energy Simulation. I'm going to say Create New. So this is going to be Office, Downtown, Springfield. Just like that. Run Name, Office, Downtown, Springfield. And I'm going to click Continue. And what's going to happen next is it's going to upload these files to the cloud. And in just a few minutes, I'll get a 30-year building energy simulation analysis. So that is being computed right now. I can go to Results and Compare. And there is Office Downtown Springfield. You can see it's currently at 0%. But what you'll notice is this happens really, really quickly. This would be, I'm not positive, this is a simple little design. This might be something that would happen very quickly on your desktop. More complicated design might be a couple of hours to run a 30-year building simulation. But the key thing about running this in the cloud is we have additional speed, much, much faster. But I can move that in the background and I can just continue to work and evolve and change this. If I wanted to go back and begin working on the overall design and working on the complexity of this form, if you notice right now I've got 3 options: mass, zones, surfaces, and form. If I want to edit the building form, I would select form. You notice the glazing in the windows go away. And now I'm back to the point where I can select this mass, edit mass, and begin making a few changes. I can also come in at this point and underneath the Analyze tab, say Finish Mass, I could come in and begin modifying the energy settings to run a different set of simulations. For instance, if I went to Conceptual Construction, I could select Edit, and you can notice that the default exterior wall constructions are lightweight, mild climate. And if you're outside in Springfield right now in late January, you'll notice that we do not have a mild climate and that we do need something more than lightweight, no insulation, or what are our exterior walls. Lightweight construction, typical mild climate insulation. We need something much heavier than that. So we can move to high mass construction, high insulation, and rerun the simulation and understand the results. As you get more experience with architecture, you can easily begin understanding the cost difference between those two and begin seeing the payoff. So I'm going to go ahead and click cancel on that, cancel on this. I did notice my note popped up that the simulation is done. So I can go to Results and Compare, Office Downtown. Just go ahead and maximize this really quickly. And I can begin to scroll through the basic data that 30-year building simulation has provided for me. And that is a baseline set of information is really nice because I can begin to look at things like infiltration, what a disaster that is. I can begin to look at things that are going to impact my design. I can begin to find ways to make improvements in terms of how the building can perform.